really great for me to be here today to present updates from the HEALEY ALS Platform Trial. So the trial was developed and is currently running to accelerate the way we develop new drugs for ALS. And it's an absolute honor and privilege for me to work on this trial along with Dr. Merit Cudkowicz, who just spoke, who is the PI and sponsor of the trial. And obviously for a trial of this size, we have multiple partners. In fact, the entire ALS community came together to support the trial. The reason you see many logos on the slide is because we have so many collaborators, both from the academic side, as well as industry and patients and foundations. Sorry, I'm having, okay. So the reason that we started the platform trial was because when Dr. Cudkowicz and Mr. Healy came together to found the Healy Center just before the pandemic, they realized that the field had a problem, that trials were taking too much time and were taking too many patient and resources in general. And so they did some research in oncology and looking at other areas of medicine and realized that simply by changing the approach, testing the same drugs could be done much faster. In fact, the simulations show even in cutting down time by over 50%, cutting down costs by a third, and most importantly, reducing allocation to placebo, which is obviously an important topic in the ALS patient community. And this is really why we started the trial, and it's really been an honor for us to work together with so many partners to design and launch the trial. Now, I want to emphasize that the goal of the trial is to screen as many drugs as rapidly as possible and also as efficiently as possible, again, saving patient and financial resources. We want to get solid answers and then determine the next steps. So far, we started testing of 5 drugs. They're listed on the slide in collaboration with a number of industry partners also listed on the slide. These drugs each target different mechanisms of action. There was a great question about which mechanism should we target. Well, at this point, again, we were casting a broad net because there's many potential targets. In fact, we know so many targets, and it's hard to predict which one will be the most effective. So we are working in collaboration with many scientists and companies to test drugs that are applicable to all forms of ALS and are considering or targeting different mechanisms. Now, the basic design of the trial is sort of similar to many other trials that were just mentioned, including the central trial in terms of a 6-month placebo control period and followed by an open label extension so that we can test the safety and efficacy of the drug both in sort of relatively short period of time, but also with long-term data on safety and efficacy as discussed by Merit earlier. And what's really unique here is that we are working with a platform approach to be able, again, to go faster rather than standalone trials and also be more efficient in terms of resources. Because we can share placebo data among different regimens, and I'll explain how that works, we also save in terms of sample size and, again, allocation to placebo. So far, just to give you a high level overview of our enrollment, and just to share that this type of approach, which is new in ALS, although it's established in cancer and other fields, really this type of approach has been really well received. And I'll talk about that, but just to give you a few numbers, we have really included over 1,000 people that have signed master protocol consent since the beginning of the trial. And just to give you a sense of when this happened, we had investigator meeting to launch the trial in March 2020. And while we may now be moving beyond the pandemic, as a reminder, we really launched and had the best enrollment rates ever in the middle of the pandemic, which I think is something that's really something that we're very, very grateful for. So we consented over 1,000 people for inclusion in this trial. The first 4 regimens were fully enrolled. Our sample size is approximately 160 people per regimen, as I will explain later. We offer open label extension, so almost 500 people have started open label extension after completing the first few regimens, and we are at this time enrolling for regimen E. We are well on our way. We enrolled already 100 people in the regimen, and obviously hope to conclude enrollment very soon. Now, I want to take a step back and see, why did we have such a good reception from this new approach that was completely new? Well, the reason for that is because I believe we worked with the entire ALS community to really design something that would be a win-win for all stakeholders, always keeping patients front and center, obviously, and with significant collaborations with industry, the FDA, foundations, and sites and investigators. So I'm going to talk about that kind of one by one. So first of all, do want to thank our industry partners who really come together and helped us really design this trial from the beginning. The picture actually is when we went to the FDA together with the first 3 industry partners just before the pandemic. And so the industry partners have told us that what they really want to get from a trial like this, which is obviously different than going alone with a standalone trial, are 3 things. Number one, expertise. So they want access to the experts, to the scientists, to the investigators who have done this for many years and can really provide input in terms of the scientific aspects of the trial. And I'll talk a little bit about that. They also want efficiency in terms of the approach, how do we really make sure that we go fast, using less resources, and how do we really communicate with the FDA? So that's why we've been bringing them in to discuss things at the FDA level from the very beginning. And the last thing they want, high quality execution, obviously. So I'll talk a little bit about that as well. In terms of engaging with sites, I'm happy to report that our sites at the NILS Consortium have really rallied around this concept. We selected 54 sites for initial inclusion in this platform trial. Those are the ones labeled in blue. But then because of overwhelming demand and really requests from sites and patients to provide more capacity in densely populated areas, as well as expand to new geographies, we selected another group of 20 sites. Those are the ones labeled in green that really allows us to bring the trial closer to where people live. So right now we're operating on a network of 74 sites. Now, we have been having great conversations with the patient community, and I had to say this is really my favorite, my favorite feature when I think about this trial, really the great connection with the patient community. And patients have been giving us advice from the beginning, from the point of view of design, but also now they continue to provide advice to us in so many different ways. And specifically, we have a patient advisory committee, and I think some of the members are on the line, and we really value their input really to a great extent. They really help us get better every day. And based on their suggestion, actually, we started doing weekly webinars every Thursday night. We are available for the entire ALS community to answer questions about the trial and about ALS research. And again, we have had really an overwhelming response. Patients with ALS and their families want to be engaged. And so if any of you is interested, we do have, again, we continue this series. In fact, we're going to have our next one tonight, and we have opportunities for everyone to sign up online, as you can see on the slide, as well as view the recordings. Now, in terms of our interactions with the FDA, we really followed the principles that were laid out by Dr. Woodcock and colleagues in this landmark New England Journal of Medicine paper, where they really laid out what's important from a regulatory perspective when you plan master protocols. And so since then, again, we've been in continuous discussions with the FDA to ensure that the trial will be something that, again, will be designed in partnership so that we can, again, continue to make progress faster. So the way this works is the following. So the platform trial is governed by a master protocol. That's like our house. It's our common protocol that we use for multiple regimens. And here by regimen, I really mean drug. So each regimen is really a different drug that's made by a different industry partner. So the master protocol lays out key elements of any protocol, really, such as the target population, the endpoints, the sample size, etc. And he also outlines a few features that are unique to platform trials, such as placebo sharing and adaptive features. For example, the fact one of the main adaptations of the trial is that we can continue to accommodate new regimens. So in our house, in our master protocol, we have different floors, and every regimen or new drug occupies one floor. So each regimen or drug is a guest in the house, and it has its own regimen-specific appendix, which is basically an amendment to the protocol where we specify everything that's related to a specific drug. So for example, the dosage, the route of administration, the safety profile, and any customization that may be necessary based on safety or mechanism of action. So while we do have a larger common protocol, there's certainly a lot of work that goes into customizing each regimen so that that meets the specific needs of the industry partner. And then regimens can come and go. They're like guests in our house. So we have hosted 5 so far. We're working on hosting more in the near future. And again, the idea is to make this a very efficient and rapid screen for new drugs. The way this works is that essentially we have a shared master protocol, as I said, and also shared infrastructure. And that's exactly what allows for the efficiencies that I mentioned earlier in terms of time, financial resources, and placebo. And very briefly, the way this works is that when somebody wants to enroll in the platform trial, the participant will be randomly assigned to any other regimens that are available and open in the platform at that particular time. So when we had 4 open, for example, the participant could be allocated to any of the ones that were open at that time. And this initial assignment is not blind. However, there is a second level randomization that's double blind. And specifically, the participant or the site will not know whether they are allocated to active or placebo within that regimen. Now, the randomization ratio, as you can see in the graph, is favorable in terms of active versus placebo. So we have a randomization ratio of 3:1. So kind of, for every 4 participants who enter the trial, only 1 goes on placebo. But then we have this shared infrastructure and protocol that allows us to share placebo data so that at the end of the placebo-controlled treatment period, each active drug is actually compared to the larger placebo pool, and that again gives us more statistical power while being efficient in terms of resources. And very briefly, per regimen, we have so far included about 160 participants per regimen. As Merit mentioned earlier, obviously as the standard of care changes, there may be adjustments in terms of the sample size. So but so far, for every regimen, again, about 160 participants, which means 120 on active and 40 on placebo. But remember that you also can leverage, or actually you will leverage as a regimen participant, all the placebo data shared from other regimens. And therefore, again, the actual sample size, let's say, is larger in terms of the final analysis. They are, at least 240 total, because we compare at least 120 on active to at least 120 on placebo from the shared placebo from other regimens. And we also have the open label extension that, as we know, as we have seen with other programs that were mentioned earlier, is becoming an important and integral component to any ALS drug development program. Just briefly touching on the endpoints. So I want to emphasize that this trial was originally conceived as a phase 2 trial, again, to rapidly screen drugs. And the primary endpoint is something that could also potentially meet regulatory approval in the event of a very robust result. So essentially, we are collecting we are measuring as the primary endpoint the change in disease severity through 24 weeks, measured by the ALS functional rating scale, accounting for mortality. And again, this is powered, and all the statistical plans and infrastructure could potentially provide confirmatory evidence. But again, that would depend on the results. The primary kind of goal is really to screen drugs rapidly. And as we do that, we obviously want to learn as much as possible about the impact of the drug on other aspects of the disease, such as the impact on respiratory function, muscle strength, survival, as safety, obviously, as well as a number of biomarkers. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So obviously, we want to leverage the trial as an opportunity to learn as much as possible about the specific mechanism that that drug is targeting and about ALS in general. And so to do that, we are assessing a number of emerging biomarkers and outcome measures. Some of them are common across the entire platform, meaning that no matter what regimen you're in, those will be measured, and others are more regimen specific, obviously based on mechanism of action of the drug. So specifically, everyone that enters the platform trial gets deep genotyping. That's common. We measure neurofilaments because of the importance of this particular biomarker across the entire platform. But then we also collect for every participant a robust set of biofluids that can be used either now to assess drug-specific and mechanism of action-specific biomarkers, and can also be stored in the future in our biorepository to analyze any new potential biomarkers that may be developing in the near future. We do also have an interest in developing better ways to monitor patients and sort of being able to do that in innovative ways. And for this reason, we have used 2 digital tools, a speech analysis app, as well as home spirometry, which was particularly important during the pandemic. And so that also tells us, that also gives us the opportunity to learn more about better ways of running trials in general, in addition to providing data for the current regimens, obviously. And we continue to engage with the scientific community to think about additional or emerging outcomes or tools that could be used for future regimens. So we can definitely add more biofluids or other methods for future regimens. I do want to mention that we have really commitment to sharing our learnings publicly and as soon as possible. So we did publish our first paper that you can see on the slide. It's available open access. And we also published our master protocol and other documents online on our website. And we will continue to add more information as we continue to write papers and other documents. So we keep everything organized thanks to this governance structure. So at the center, we have an executive committee that provides overall leadership and direction to the trial. Each regimen is essentially firewalled from other regimens, has a dedicated steering committee led by experts in the field, and I'll talk about that in a second, and a dedicated operational team that provides all the execution for that particular regimen. Now, we also have a number of other committees that you can see on the in the bubbles next to the executive committee, and I'll talk a little bit about those, but essentially the principle here is to get all critical input from expert stakeholders while also minimizing sort of, burden on anyone and really making this as efficient as possible. So everyone reports to the executive committee that provides overall direction to the trial. So obviously at the core of the trial, we also have this design committee that includes Dr. Cudkowicz, who is the PI and sponsor of the trial, myself, I'm the co-PI, and several expert physician investigators, James Barry, Jinsey Andrews, Jeremy Scheffner. And we have a fantastic team of statisticians. I would say these statisticians are the ones who are blinded and help us with design. We also have a number of other statisticians who works on other aspects, more operational aspects of the trial. And for this group, for the design piece, we really leverage a fantastic collaboration between Melanie and Ben from Berry Consultants, as well as Eric and Maria Bell from MGH. Berry Consultants are the experts in the world in terms of platform trial approaches, and our team at MGH has a very long experience with ALS trials. So we really wanted to leverage both sets of statisticians that provide both ALS expertise as well as platform-specific expertise. How do we select drugs for the trial? Well, that task is for the therapy evaluation committee, and really this is based on science and readiness for the trial. And so again, we continue to receive applications because we want to continue to add to the trial. So many thanks to all the people who are working on this aspect. We do work in close collaboration with many other ALS experts who help us as part of the conduct of specific regimens. And they help by being either lead investigators or co-lead investigators, or they participate in the steering committee. As I said earlier, what we realized was important for industries to have access to the experts, the scientific experts and clinical experts. And so all these colleagues were listed here, and many others provide expertise and really help help us conduct each regimen. And this is also a great training opportunity. Most of of our colleagues listed here have had extensive experience in running other trials. Some of our colleagues join in a more junior position so that we can continue to train them and continue to increase the number of people who have ALS expertise. I do want to mention that all of these runs thanks to the clinical operations team. We have both a very robust group at our institute at MGH, and these are the directors, but really they represent a team of over 60 staff who are fully committed and dedicated to the actual execution of the trial. So this will be our cleanups team. Most of them have experience in ALS trials that goes back 20 years. And we have trained over 400 site staff trained across 74 sites. And so what's important here in terms of efficiency is that our central team has managed again to train all of these people at the sites, and we continue to train more. But essentially, these sites already have been trained on the master protocol. So whenever we add a new regimen, we continue to add and just refresh the training so that sort of we don't start from scratch for every new regimen. We already can really benefit from the extensive training that all the people have had at the site level. I do want to emphasize that we work with a central IRB, and that allows us to approve new regimens or new drugs, new protocols, new amendments to the master protocol very rapidly. And that's been really another great feature of the trial. And we also partner with a number of vendors, and I want to highlight again the central IRB, our biostatisticians. We work with Clintrax in terms of medical monitoring, and DSMB that provide overall safety oversight to the entire platform, which has been very important again for continuity and continuous efficiency. We have obviously a great relationship with the Bioneurological Institute that has been working on outcomes and site monitoring for the NILS consortium for many years, and we have other vendors. So just to wrap this up, where are we now? So we have completed testing of the first few regimens, specifically regimen A, B, and C. And what we have seen is that we got clear answers. And again, with efficient execution in this context of a phase 2 trial. Unfortunately, the results for the first regimen, regimen A, were not positive. In fact, we stopped early for futility. I didn't mention that, but the trial also has efficient early futility stopping rules embedded in the master protocol, so that if we find out that the drug is not going to have a positive outcome, we can redirect our resources to other regimens. And so while we were disappointed in seeing that regimen A was stopped for futility, again, that was part of the efficient approach, trying to be as fast as possible in our testing. And also we recently reported results for regimen B, also clear answers there. Again, with the the regimen unfortunately did not meet the pre-specified primary and secondary endpoints, and we're now working on full study results, including subgroup analysis, biomarkers, all the exploratory measures that will tell us more about the mechanism of action of the drug and provide important learnings about ALS. Those are expected in the coming months. For regimen C, also we recently announced the top-line results. And again, while the primary endpoint was not met, there was a signal for one of the 2 dosages that was tested in the trial. And so that will require additional testing. So again, while again, there wasn't any extremely positive result from the first set of regimens, what's important for us is to really have efficient execution in terms of time, resources, and get clear answers and determine next steps, which will be presented at future meetings. So right now we continue to test more drugs. Regimen D is ongoing in terms of follow-up, and we again we are working on that, and regimen D right now is in the open label extension phase. Regimen E is actually enrolling new participants for the RCT or placebo-controlled trial right now. And we have 2 regimens that are in startup, so we should be able to open them in early 2023. And we had 3 additional regimens that have been selected for inclusion, and now we're working through the process so that we can add them soon as well. So what's important here is really this idea of efficiency, fast timelines, as well as high quality execution, so that we can test as many drugs as possible in less time. And last but not least, I'm providing here our contact information for Merit and myself. We continue to engage with industry, and we accept new applications. You can see the QR code if you're from an industry, from a company. You can download the application form here, and we will have in-person meetings coming up, both at NEALS. Hopefully, you can all join us at NEALS in November, as well as an industry workshop that's been planned for March 2023. And that was all. I hope this was helpful.
Thank you, Sabrina. It was fantastic. Thanks for a great update on what is a profoundly impactful program in the ALS space, in the clinical space. Being mindful of time, I just want to ask one question. You mentioned the biomarker or the biosample repository that you're collecting under this protocol. My question is, when you're doing analyses of those samples down the line, do you envision studying the whole house, or will it be constrained to individual rooms in those analyses, or will it be a combination of both?
That's a great question. It could be both, depending on what we're going to analyze. And so certainly this really gives us the opportunity to study new biomarkers as they are developed, that they could be applicable to everyone. Or, for specific drugs, we could go back and study more, depending on, again, evolution of the science. And I do want to mention that we also have this ever-growing natural history study, if you will, that's embedded in the trial. That's the shared placebo. And so as we continue to add new regimens, we also add more placebo participants. And so those can be leveraged as a resource for the community in the future, once we're able to share all these data and samples.
Thank you very much, Sabrina. We'll move on now to our next speaker, who will be